Welcome to Useless Facts for Sleep. Tonight, we'll wander back in time to explore some useless but strangely fascinating facts about dinosaurs. They won't change your life, but they might just help you drift off into a calm and restful sleep. So close your eyes, relax, and let's begin. The very word dinosaur has an interesting story of its own. It comes from the Greek words deinos, meaning terrible or awe-inspiring, and sauros, meaning lizard. Put together, the name means terrible lizard. But here's the curious part. Dinosaurs were not lizards at all. They belonged to their own unique group of ancient creatures, unlike anything alive today. The name was first introduced in 1842 by a British scientist named Richard Owen. He wanted a way to describe these giant fossilized bones that were being discovered across Europe. When he looked at them, he realized they represented something enormous, something powerful, and something the world had never seen before. Imagine the excitement of that time, the first giant fossils being uncovered from the earth. Entire skeletons of creatures that had walked the land millions of years before humans even existed. To Owen, they were not just animals. They were nature's masterpieces, both terrible and magnificent. And so, the word dinosaur was born. A name that sounds a little frightening, but in truth, simply captures the wonder of these long-lost giants. As you hear the word now, perhaps you can picture those enormous shapes in your mind, slowly moving through ancient forests, unaware that one day they would be remembered with such a powerful name.
Not every dinosaur was a towering giant. Some were unbelievably small, delicate creatures that could fit in the palm of your hand. One of the tiniest known dinosaurs was Microraptor. It wasn't much larger than a crow, and it had not 2, but 4 wings. Feathers stretched along both its arms and its legs. Scientists believe this little dinosaur could glide from tree to tree like a prehistoric kite drifting through the ancient forests of what is now China. Imagine a time when the skies weren't filled with birds as we know them today, but with tiny, feathered dinosaurs quietly swooping between the branches. Instead of the earth shaking beneath the feet of giants, there were moments of silence when something as small and light as Microraptor drifted softly through the air. Useless though it may be to know this, there's something peaceful about picturing such a fragile ancient creature fluttering gently in the dim light of a prehistoric forest.
Dinosaurs weren't just here for a short chapter of Earth's story. They ruled this planet for around 165 million years. To put that into perspective, modern humans have only been around for about 300,000 years. That means dinosaurs thrived for more than 500 times longer than we have existed. Imagine that stretch of time. Millions upon millions of years. Whole species rising and disappearing, long before the first humans ever walked the earth. Forests grew and vanished. Oceans shifted their shapes. Entire mountain ranges rose and eroded away, all while dinosaurs continued to walk the land. Some were enormous and heavy, shaking the ground with every step. Others were tiny, scurrying through the undergrowth, leaving hardly a trace. And yet, through all those ages, they were simply living their lives, eating, nesting, and wandering under ancient skies. It's almost impossible for us to truly imagine such a vast stretch of time. But in the quiet of the night, it's comforting to think of them as part of a much larger story, one that reminds us how small and how fleeting our own time on Earth really is. When we think of dinosaurs, we often picture massive towering creatures, but not all of them were giants. Some, like Compsognathus, were no larger than a chicken.
This little dinosaur scurried through the undergrowth during the late Jurassic period. It had long legs, a slender body, and sharp little teeth for catching insects and small prey. Imagine it darting between ferns and bushes, quick, light-footed, almost like a bird. In fact, if you saw one today, you might mistake it for a strange, oversized bird rather than a dinosaur. It's a funny thought that in a world filled with giants like Brachiosaurus and Stegosaurus, there were also tiny dinosaurs that could have disappeared into the grass at your feet. Sometimes the smallest details of the past remind us that nature has room for both the mighty and the miniature. And in the quiet of the night, it's easy to picture this tiny dinosaur moving carefully through its prehistoric forest, almost unnoticed as the great thunderous giants pass by.
Among the many dinosaurs that capture our imagination, the Stegosaurus stands out with its bony plates rising proudly along its back and its spiked tail held like a weapon. But hidden inside its massive body was something surprisingly small, a brain no bigger than a walnut. Imagine a creature as long as a bus, weighing several tons, yet guided by something smaller than the palm of your hand. For a time, scientists even wondered if Stegosaurus might have had a second brain near its hips to help control its body, though that idea has since faded. Still, there is something oddly charming about this gentle giant, plodding slowly through the forest, swishing its tail, and carrying on its quiet life with only the simplest of thoughts. In a world filled with fierce hunters and sharp intelligence, Stegosaurus reminds us that not every creature needed brilliance to survive. Sometimes, size, patience, and a calm presence were enough. And perhaps, as you rest tonight, it's a little comforting to imagine this peaceful dinosaur, moving slowly and steadily, unconcerned with anything more than the next mouthful of leaves.
Not all dinosaurs had the same kind of body we imagine from the movies. Some of them, like their distant relatives in the sea, may have had unusual features that surprise us even today. Take the example of certain ancient creatures related to dinosaurs, like the ichthyosaurs and other marine reptiles, and the birds that came later. Many of them had more than one heart, pumping life through their vast bodies. Though we can't know for certain how many hearts each dinosaur carried, we do know that some of their modern descendants, like birds and even the great blue whale, need powerful circulation to survive. Some scientists believe that the largest dinosaurs, like Brachiosaurus, may have had special adaptations in their hearts to pump blood all the way up their long necks to their brains. Imagine a creature so tall that its head brushed the tops of ancient trees, and the strength it would take just to send a heartbeat from chest to skull. Even the simplest rhythms of life, the steady pulse of a heart, becomes something extraordinary when stretched across such massive bodies. And as you listen now, perhaps you can let your own heart be slow, steady, and calm, like those of the giants that once roamed our world.
For a long time, people thought of dinosaurs as scaly reptilian monsters, covered in rough skin like crocodiles. But as more fossils have been discovered, a new picture has slowly emerged. Many dinosaurs were not covered in scales at all, but in soft, colorful feathers. Small raptors, like Velociraptor, likely had feathers along their arms and tails, giving them a bird-like appearance. Even larger species may have carried downy coats when they were young to keep them warm. Imagine walking through a prehistoric forest, not surrounded only by gray and green scaly giants, but by flashes of red, orange, and gold, as feathered dinosaurs strutted and flapped like oversized birds. It is strange and almost amusing to think that the fiercest hunters of the Mesozoic era might have looked more like giant chickens than like the fearsome beasts we see in the movies.
Yet, in that image, there's something comforting. These creatures, once thought of as terrifying, are softened by feathers, turned almost into bedtime companions from a dream. Tonight, you can picture them not as monsters, but as strange, colorful birds of a forgotten world, quietly moving under the ancient sun. Thanks to movies, many people imagine velociraptors as tall, terrifying hunters, clever, fast, and almost as large as a person. But the truth is a little different, and perhaps a little funny. The real velociraptor was only about the size of a turkey. It stood less than 2 feet tall and weighed around 30 pounds. Picture a creature no larger than the bird you might see at a farm, darting quickly across the sand dunes of ancient Mongolia. It wasn't towering or terrifying, but it was still a skilled predator. With sharp claws on its feet and a mouthful of teeth, it likely hunted small animals with surprising speed. What makes it even more fascinating is that Velociraptor probably had feathers, not smooth scales. In fact, if you saw one today, you might mistake it for an odd, oversized bird instead of a dinosaur. So the next time you think of velociraptors as giant, fearsome monsters, you might smile at the thought that, in reality, they were closer to a scrappy little turkey running through the sand. And perhaps that makes them feel less frightening and more like curious companions from a very distant past. Among the most iconic dinosaurs is the Triceratops, a great four-legged plant eater with 3 sharp horns on its face and a wide shield-like frill protecting its neck. It looked powerful and fierce, but in truth, it spent much of its life doing something very simple: chewing. Triceratops had rows and rows of teeth in its mouth, not just a few like us. In fact, over the course of its life, it may have used as many as 800 teeth. These teeth grew in groups called batteries, stacked like little machines ready to grind down tough plants. When one tooth wore out, another would slide into place, always keeping the dinosaur prepared for its endless meals. Imagine this giant wandering slowly through ancient fields, lowering its massive head and pulling mouthful after mouthful of ferns into its beak, chewing endlessly day after day. Though its horns might have been used for defense or for showing off, it was those hundreds of teeth that truly defined its life. And perhaps, in the quiet of the night, it's soothing to think of such a powerful creature living so simply, grazing, chewing, and moving gently across the land.
When it comes to size, few creatures in history could compare to Argentinosaurus. This enormous sauropod is believed to be the largest land animal to have ever walked the earth. Estimates suggest it may have stretched more than 100 feet from head to tail and weighed as much as 100 tons. Imagine a creature so massive that its head brushed the tops of ancient trees, while its tail swept across the ground behind it like a moving bridge. Every step would have been heavy and slow, shaking the earth beneath its feet. And yet, despite its impossible size, Argentinosaurus was not a hunter or a fighter. It was a gentle giant, spending its long days eating leaves and branches, just trying to fuel its enormous body. It's strange to picture something so massive living so peacefully, a true giant of history, whose life was defined not by battles or power, but simply by the quiet act of eating, growing, and wandering across the land. As you rest tonight, you can imagine that towering shadow moving slowly through the forests of the past, each step measured, each breath steady, in a world that no longer exists.
Not every dinosaur stayed on the ground. Some took to the skies in strange and fascinating ways. One such creature was Yi Chi, a small feathered dinosaur discovered in China. Unlike birds, Its wings weren't made only of feathers. Instead, it had a long, rod-like bone that stretched out from its wrist, supporting a thin membrane of skin, almost like a bat's wing. This odd design suggests that Yi Qi may have been able to glide from tree to tree, floating silently through the prehistoric forests. Imagine a quiet evening millions of years ago. The air still, the trees tall and shadowy. Suddenly, a small shape drifts from one branch to another, gliding softly on wings of skin and feather. It was neither bird nor bat, but something entirely unique, a forgotten experiment of evolution. Useless though it may be to know this detail, there's something dreamlike about picturing such a creature, drifting silently in the twilight of a world long gone.
Among the stranger dinosaurs was Spinosaurus, a predator even larger than Tyrannosaurus rex. What set it apart was the great sail that rose from its back, made of long spines covered with skin. Some of these spines were taller than a grown person, creating a ridge that stretched like a sail across the dinosaur's body. Scientists still wonder what purpose it served. Perhaps it helped regulate body temperature, soaking in warmth from the sun, or releasing heat into the air. Maybe it was used to impress other dinosaurs, a towering display of size and strength. Or perhaps it made the dinosaur look even more fearsome to rivals. Whatever the reason, it's easy to imagine this enormous creature standing by the water's edge, its sail rising high above the reeds, catching the light of the ancient sun. In that quiet image, the Spinosaurus becomes less of a monster and more like a strange, slow-moving shadow, one more mystery drifting across the pages of Earth's history.
Some dinosaurs seemed almost unreal in their proportions. Take Mamenchisaurus, for example, a sauropod known for having one of the longest necks of any creature to ever live on land. Its neck alone may have stretched more than 30 feet, longer than a city bus. Imagine walking through a forest where the tops of the trees swayed in the wind, and somewhere above, this gentle giant reached calmly into the canopy, plucking leaves from branches far out of reach of any other animal. Its enormous body moved slowly and heavily across the ground, but its long neck drifted gracefully through the air, like the mast of a ship gliding across an ancient sea of trees. Though we cannot truly picture what it felt like to see such a creature in life, the thought of it brings a kind of stillness, a reminder of just how vast and varied nature can be. As you rest tonight, perhaps you can imagine that long, swan-like neck swaying gently above you, while the world around it remained small and quiet below.
One of the strangest dinosaurs was Pachycephalosaurus, often called the dome-headed dinosaur. On top of its skull, it carried a thick, rounded dome of solid bone, sometimes more than 10 inches thick. Imagine the strength it must have taken to grow and carry such a heavy shield right on its head. Scientists believe this bony dome may have been used in battles between rivals, with two dinosaurs butting their heads together like rams. Others think it may have been for display, showing off to attract a mate or to warn competitors. Whatever its purpose, it gave Pachycephalosaurus a look unlike any other dinosaur, as if it wore a helmet built right into its body. Picture this creature moving slowly through the grasslands, the evening sun glowing softly on its dome-shaped skull. It might pause, lower its head, and prepare to clash with another of its kind, the sound echoing faintly across the prehistoric plains. It's strange, and perhaps a little amusing, to think of such powerful collisions happening in such a long-vanished world.
Yet here we are, imagining it quietly in the stillness of night, far removed yet strangely connected.
Some dinosaurs may have filled the prehistoric world not only with their footsteps, but with their voices. The Parasaurolophus was a duck-billed dinosaur with a long, curved crest that stretched back from its head like a great hollow tube. This crest wasn't just for show. Scientists believe it acted as a natural musical instrument. Air passing through the crest may have created deep, resonant sounds, much like the call of a horn. These calls could have carried for miles across the ancient landscape, allowing herds to communicate, attract mates, or warn each other of danger. Imagine standing in a quiet valley millions of years ago, when suddenly a low, haunting sound echoes across the hills. Not from a drum or trumpet, but from the breath of a living creature. It's a reminder that the world of dinosaurs wasn't silent. It was filled with calls, songs, and voices we can only imagine now. And as you drift towards sleep, perhaps you can picture those long, echoing notes rolling across the night, a lullaby from a distant world. Dinosaurs came in many shapes and sizes, some heavy and slow, others built for speed. One of the fastest was Ornithomimus, a slender bird-like dinosaur with long legs and a lightweight body. Scientists believe it could reach speeds of up to 40 or even 50 miles per hour. To compare, the fastest human sprinters today, like Olympic champions, can reach just under 30 miles per hour for only a few seconds. Ornithomimus could have dashed past them with ease, vanishing into the distance before they even reached full stride. Picture it racing across the open plains of the Cretaceous period, its legs a blur of movement, its body stretched low like a modern ostrich. The wind would whip past, dust rising from the ground as it outran almost anything that dared to chase it. It's a curious thought that in a world filled with giants, one of the greatest survival tools was not size or strength, but speed. And in the stillness of night, you can almost imagine that blur of motion across the ancient earth, a fleeting shadow that disappears before you even notice it was there. Not every dinosaur relied on speed or size to survive. Some chose protection. The Ankylosaurus was one of the most heavily armored creatures to ever walk the earth. Its body was covered in thick, bony plates, forming a shield that made it look almost like a walking fortress. At the end of its tail, it carried a massive bony club, heavy enough to break the legs of a predator if it dared to attack. Imagine this creature moving slowly through the undergrowth, its armor gleaming under the sun, its steps steady and deliberate. Even the mighty Tyrannosaurus Rex might have thought twice before challenging such a tank-like opponent. Despite its fearsome defenses, Ankylosaurus was a peaceful plant eater. It wanted nothing more than to graze quietly on ferns and low shrubs. Yet, if danger came too close, it could swing its tail with a force that could shatter bone. There is something comforting about this creature. A gentle giant, wrapped in armor, safe in its quiet strength. Tonight, as you rest, you might picture that armored form lying calmly in the shade, unmoved by the chaos of the world around it. Among the strangest of all dinosaurs was Therizinosaurus. It stood tall with a long neck, a bulky body, and, most curiously of all, enormous claws on its hands. Each claw could reach up to 3 feet long as a sword. At first, scientists thought it must have been a fearsome predator, using these claws to tear apart prey. But later discoveries showed something surprising. Therizinosaurus was likely a gentle plant eater. Those huge claws may have been used to pull down branches, to gather leaves, or perhaps to scare off predators that came too close.
Picture it standing quietly in a grove of ancient trees, lifting its long arms and carefully raking foliage toward its beak, almost like a gardener pruning a bush. Its appearance was bizarre, part bird, part monster, part mystery. Yet, despite its fearsome hands, it seems to have lived a calm, plant-eating life. In the silence of night, there's something oddly peaceful about imagining such a strange creature, moving slowly, with long, graceful arms tipped in blades that it used not for violence, but for survival.
And there you have it, one more collection of strange and wonderful facts from the time of the dinosaurs. Some were giants that shook the earth with every step. Others were no bigger than a bird, darting silently through the trees. All of them are gone now, their world long vanished, but their stories remain, scattered in stone, waiting for us to rediscover them. As you close your eyes tonight, let these images drift softly through your thoughts. A shadow of a long neck swaying above the trees, a ripple in the water where a sail-backed giant swam, the quiet crack of an egg in the sand. The world of dinosaurs may be far away, but in the stillness of your imagination, it feels close, almost within reach. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the past. May these useless little facts carry you gently into sleep, where dreams and ancient worlds meet. Good night.